Welcome to the Future of Structures podcast, where we talk to the experts who are evolving our buildings for tomorrow. And here is your host, Adam Jones.
Today we are speaking with Graham Davies. So Graham is the ex-chair of the Sustainable Engineering Society of Australia, better known as SENG. He has one of the most diverse backgrounds that I've ever come across. He studied mechanical engineering in Capetown and completed a postgrad in advanced engineering analysis, so finite element method and structural analysis. And now he's been exposed to medical, energy, mining, water, advanced materials, and is now even in politics. So this has prepared him well to have a very well-rounded view on sustainability and engineering in general. So in the show we talk about how to implement sustainability principles, the increasing importance of embodied energy in engineering, and the importance of metering and monitoring in buildings. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Without any further ado, here is Graham Davies.
Yes, well, I did mechanical engineering in Capetown University, and then did a postgraduate in advanced engineering analysis, finite elements and structural analysis, as well as fluid flow. And decided that was after doing masters. That was where I was going to go with academia. So I moved into business and got a job looking at taking on quite a nice sized project, particularly for, I guess in Africa you get good experience straight away. Yep. You're thrown in the deep end because of the shortage of engineers. So it was thrown in quite a large project, which was in the phasing out asbestos actually.
Okay.
So inside the factory I did that. Thereafter I got into the software engineering, 3D modeling, 3D printing, which I did 20 years ago, consulting in
20, so there's 3D printers 20 years ago.
Yes.
That's unbelievable.
It's amazing. I show people samples of that and they think, oh, right, we thought it was you. No, obviously it was very expensive then, so you chose which product you did. And it's not as sophisticated as it is now in what it can do, but you could get good representations of 3D plastic models. So
yeah, totally.
So, and that involved, I then had my own consultancy. I went to the company and had my own consultancy doing high-end engineering analysis and setting software, 3D printing, making injection molds, a whole range of products. That got me exposed to a whole range of industries, including the medical, the mining, the energy, water. And because I dealt with that tricky end engineering analysis, and that was very critical because it meant I could switch between industries later on. We then moved to Australia 14 years ago, and I then worked in automotive industry where I dealt with patents. I've got a couple of patents to my name which have been commercialised.
Oh, wow.
And then moved into electronic manufacturing when suddenly the automotive one was going offshore. Then the electronic manufacturing was going offshore. So someone phoned me up and said, I want to go into mining and energy. So I said, look, energy's always been the one.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
You got an all-rounder, a bit of every engineering, background. That's unbelievable.
Well, that's right. So, and that leads. It's critical in, as you said, how did it lead to me becoming chair of sustainability? So having been involved in the mining and then the energy, and so I rode the wave of the mining boom. So I was like the surfer out there, caught the wave, and then it tossed me out. So I wasn't the best surfer. When the GFC arrived, and so everything collapsed at that stage. Yeah. And then I set up a company again, and I've been with my company since then, often working through big companies or doing small consulting jobs through the company itself. But out of that, having dealt with all these industries, and I saw the short-term design life cycle. 10-year warranty was in the automotive industry, which is actually quite good. Then you saw it in electronic manufacturing, could go down to, sometimes people give a 2-3 year warranty, and you're throwing away products. And this then led on to embodied energy. Every time you throw away a product, you're throwing away energy. So in about 2012, in actual fact, it's quite interesting. I was whinging about a whole lot of things, so my wife said, stop whinging and do something, which he regrets. So I wrote a key paper on linking sustainability to all these industries and how we've got economic drivers, short-term economic drivers, how engineering is fitting into that, and it's all leading to a lack of sustainability. And then plus a couple of other facts. We're down to 20% of our forests, 20% of large fish stocks. You've got the climate issue, and so engineering's assisting economics to drive a change which is not for everyone's movement. And with all of that solid base in many industries, gave a really good, powerful way of being able to talk to people about sustainability in their own industry.
And it drove you to be part of a paper by Engineers Australia implementing sustainability principles, practices and principles. So can you just give us a little bit of a background on what this paper, or the goal of this paper?
So possibly from going back to the paper I put in 2012 to a conference, which was kind of a landmark of over years and years I'd collected this. And in a way, just going back a stage further, when I was a student, I played in a rock band and we used to compose a lot of songs. And that's like my diary of how I felt about social and environmental issues at the time. And so I've gone back a little bit to where I was at, but with a lot more knowledge in that, so it's not suddenly this was a revelation, but it gave a lot of knowledge. But the facts and figures were important. And so this then led to me being involved in sustainable engineering, involved in the climate and sustainability policies. And out of those, it's all very well to say, well, we've got to capture externalities, do this, do whatever. How do we implement it? And that's where this document came into being. So it came from the policy. Now let's see, how do we implement it?
Yep.
And so with a lot of the information, I was involved as a key author in putting that forward. The one section, State of the Planet, I was certainly very involved with that. And then others were involved with a lot prior to that of specific measures and how do you get that. That's the chapter 3. I don't know how well whether you've looked at the document much.
I had one good read of it. I really enjoyed it.
Okay. So the early part frames the questions, and then the second part, or the third part, if you like, really goes into the detail. So other people put a lot of that together, but it was then putting it together as a coherent document. Very difficult when you've got a lot of people all working on it, but it's out there and it's been released here.
So when implementing sustainability, how much is it the responsibility of individuals compared to politicians, compared to corporations? Because for me, it just seems there's sometimes a lot of finger pointing going on and not always a lot of responsibility. So I don't know, in your opinion, is it a political thing where we need to get these systems in place first?
I think it's joint, and in fact that first paper I released in 2012 was exactly, we could blame let's start off with one group. Let's say the engineers, they're implementing and wanting to do mines like Adani and whatever, causing this sustainability, but they're driven by the economics. The economics is driven by the legal framework. The legal framework is put in place by the politicians, and the politicians are elected by us, the people, and then you've got this full circle. So therefore, there's no one single group that's to blame. Politicians put their finger in the wind, and if there's enough voters say something, they go with the flow.
Yeah.
So if you have enough people wanting an issue, politicians take it on board. So essentially, it comes back to the people, the politicians, to show leadership, and it really is. That's what really makes this thing difficult. It's a collective of all the professional bodies, all the people installing things, doing everything. If they all took on a little bit extra, then slowly you move towards that sustainability. So everybody's got a role to play.
Yeah, and it's a lot of these people in these positions, they're fantastic. They're obviously great people. They're probably great husbands, and you know, I used to be in an organisation actually who was part of Adani and Carmichael, and it surprised me because there's such good people, and the company was part of this project. But at the same time, saying they've got these values and all these principles, and then not really sticking to them. So I think that's in my opinion, one of the big things as well. It's the leadership that is going to bring everyone forward, and we all benefit from sustainability. And that was one of the big things you said it, or was mentioned at the start of the document.
Yes, and that's an interesting thing. I'm aware of, for example, I can say it's known that AECOM are project managers now for Adani. Prior to that, there'd been it was Parsons Brinckerhoff, or
that was where I was.
Yeah. Now, so I've worked with the people in these organisations, and what it is it's a difficult balance that kind of they give in the instructions. So engineering companies take that on. But there's the argument, we don't do it, someone else will, and we're only following instructions. So at what point do you take a stand? Now, I wouldn't say that there's been a discussion, should Engineers Australia say no to Adani? My view is slightly different, is can you justify any work you do against the policies of Engineers Australia? Well, in fact, not just the policies, but the Code of Ethics, which says to act in the interest of community ahead of sectional and personal interest. And then you've got the policies that roll out from that and implementing sustainability. So if someone can justify their actions, it puts them under pressure to say, okay, yes, I can justify that. Because the problem is, it's not just, I worked in the mining industry. Mining's only providing what people want. So maybe it's the throwaway society, the advertisers who are selling us products we don't need with a short lifespan. Are they as guilty, or they've also got to justify their actions? And that's where this Code of Ethics is really powerful. You put it to every single person. Are you acting in accordance with the Code of Ethics? It's a bit like the oath taken by doctors. If it would be good if it was as strong as that. That are you doing that? And if so, we expect you to take a stand on your principles. And so what's happened with some of those companies, they said, look, if you don't want to be involved, we understand, and you won't be penalised within the company. Yeah. Should the company take more of a stand? That's, obviously...
Awesome. It's an interesting one. So it's a tricky one. But yeah, so I guess moving forward, so how do we actually plan for some of the climate adaptation as well, assuming that there's big changes ahead in our climate?
Obviously, the best is to mitigate rather than adapt. So if you keep cutting your hand, you say, well, let's get rid of the source of the cut. Firstly, that's one of the key issues. Adapting, I think, is there are standards already in place which deal with the sea level rise. So a large project I was involved in, which was right at coastline, it was pretty clear that you've now got to design for a certain sea level rise. But you've also got to design for higher wind loads and everything. So anything being installed now is adapting to that. But you also have adaptation in the water area and the catchments, because of taking out water, we don't have the ground water as much as we used to. So you've got the issue of dams not filling up, so conservation of water. So it's right across the board, really.
Yeah, nice. And we've got there's some in some of the projects that are going ahead now. There's a lot of rating tools, but at the moment, for a lot of people, it might seem to be expensive. Is this the best way of measuring sustainability, do you think?
Had a lot of debate on that. I mixed feeling and rating tools, because there are lots of different tools all out there, and people get bogged down with the rating tools. My view is we've got one rating tool which we all use, which is called money. And so therefore you cost all the externalities, the land degradation. You don't put this cost onto society. The company doing the work is doing that, must repair it. Carbon's the classic externality. You need a price on carbon. If I dumped my rubbish down in the river, it's cheaper than going to the waste dump. That's the best measure that then the economics drives it, if you put the right price on it. And you get economists on board. The question is, it's politically toxic to try and put a price on some of these things because of big interest to sort of driving, it'll crash the economy. Actually, it won't. It'll probably add to the economy, because you increase these fees. That's money being paid out, and therefore you'll adjust your behaviour accordingly.
Yeah.
So that to me is a bigger driver than a tick box issue. And having said that, I think the rating tools have been very good in bringing awareness and getting things across the line. But fundamentally, my view is until the economics changes to address that. And this is actually the interesting thing. This is not a left-right debate. Margaret Thatcher spoke about short-term economics. She also spoke about the biggest threat to society in 1989 in the UN address, being the biggest threat to mankind was climate and environmental damage. So it's not a left-right debate, and that's a very powerful way of putting it across to people.
Yeah.
So
now you're in politics, and obviously Australia had a crack at the carbon tax. Do you think from the inside, do you see it actually coming on in a 5-year horizon, 10-year, or if at all ever?
Definitely, it will happen. Now you're asking a big question: when will that happen? What I can say is companies, even oil companies, and they all, when they do their long-term forecasting, build in a carbon price.
Oh, wow.
So they actually do it now, and if they don't have to pay the price, that's extra cream on the top, if you like. That's bonus money for them. Yeah. But they would not do a long-term forecast project without that. So just about all major companies do that. The implication is it's really, when can this get across the line politically? And when these things happen, I think there's enough momentum building. It might happen very fast. Yeah. And we see that with legislation across the line, where suddenly in the space, if you think about the gay marriage debate, which 5 years ago Labor and Liberals was off the table. Was it 5 years ago? Forget. And suddenly, without being aware, it's just switched over. I think this is obviously a much bigger issue we need to address. It's our whole society is at stake here, the civilization's at stake. Yep. I think when suddenly the penny drops, the party that puts that out is a strong measure.
Yeah.
So maybe 5 years. Who knows?
Who knows? Well, hopefully it's out of choice and proactivity as opposed to necessity, because it probably is, inevitable that it's going to happen, and it's an exciting time if you're in the sustainability industry, because it's an inevitable trend that the whole world eventually is going to have to start pushing in this direction.
That's right, and I think being in South Australia, as I am, it's been at the forefront of debate with the blackout, and when that happened, I was very involved with putting to people, there's rampant rhetoric. Let's just calm down and find out what the problem is. Because clearly there'd been power lines blown over. Certainly there'd been tripping. And it's found that, yes, there was tripping of the wind farms, but it's not actually the wind farm per se that was the problem. It was actually just the settings. Something as simple as that. I think now that's actually spurred on action. And I might add, in 2013, I wrote a report on storage. And in fact, 2011, South Australia, the government needed to act on that, and they didn't. So they've been guilty, they've been asleep at the wheel, but it now has triggered some good things like the Tesla battery, which has a lot of advantages. It's not just storage, it's fast response and grid response. But it's only put renewables in the light, and it's also now shown that the cost of renewables is actually less than other forms of energy. This financial year, South Australia's prices have been lower than any of the mainland states.
Wow, I didn't know that.
In the spot price, that hasn't translated into people's bills at home, but in time it will. It's because of the mismatch, complete dog's breakfast of the market rules, that basically the big companies are allowed to gouge, and they've even said that, and they do, to make profits. You think, who set up these rules? So you can start to see where the political angle came in. I thought, you go through all these clever technical things, and then you have these rules which are ridiculous. So that is an important fact, and acknowledge that South Australia's prices have been the lowest since there's been someone watching the players who withhold power deliberately to push the price up. And it's actually shown renewables to be very effective. Doesn't mean that's the only solution. You can do it overnight. Of course not. That's one has to be practical. You're going to have a mix of different energies.
Yep. And what is, do you think, the best renewable way of doing energy storage? Is it batteries, or there's also pumped energy, hydro storage, and plans for Snowy 2.0 apparently. What do you think is going to be the best solution in the mid to long term?
One of the ways of answering that is saying, what's the best diet? Should you just eat meat? Should you just eat vegetables? Should you just eat sushi? It actually is a variety. Batteries are really good because of the fast response, but they're more expensive than pumped hydro. So pumped hydro is good for bulk storage where there's water. There's also things like compressed air. There's also the solar thermal, which captures their solar heat and stores it in molten salt with about a 95% efficiency. So that's a very effective way. Obviously, some of them are competing, and which ones pan out, well, that's up to companies and economics to drive the best options. So it's a range of storage
awesome.
Options.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So we started the conversation, I guess, at the high level, the politics, and we're moving down toward the more technical things. And one thing you were talking about when we spoke about on the phone before this interview was the opportunities in metering and monitoring existing buildings. So can you just tell us a little bit about what this actually is for those who aren't aware of it?
I suppose, and you're referring specifically to energy in the buildings, metering and monitoring, so with buildings, one of the issues is that's where a lot of the energy ends up being used in heating and cooling and the likes. So the best way it's one of these, if you don't have information, you can't manage it. It's a classic thing of saying. So by installing how you're using your energy, there's things now in the market. When we put in solar panels 6 years ago, I wanted to have a control system which was going to cost well over 10,000 if it was implementable, to quote unquote someone. Yeah. You could do it in industry, and there you're talking hundreds of thousands. Now for about $500, you can actually get a unit which measures where your electricity is coming from, where it's going to, and what it's doing.
Wow.
Real-time, close to real-time graphing. So when you switch the kettle on, my family are a little bit concerned. I can tell when they're making tea if I'm not if I'm interstate. I go, hey, you just switch the kettle on. Yeah. What that does is it shows how you use your energy, and there's reports showing that people can save 8% of their energy by changing their behaviours without any effects on their behaviour. Yeah. Without any, people are not going to go to the nth degree. So 8% is easily done without any hardship, shall we say? Yeah, that's a fair amount.
Definitely, it's probably you get your $500 back pretty quick as well.
Yeah,
the cost.
Well, that's right, and so by measuring and monitoring and controlling as well, particularly if you've got solar panels, you can say, well, actual fact, I've got surplus energy. Best to chill your house down in advance of the fact we're expecting a heat wave or the extra heat, so you can do that rather than put it in the grid. On a bigger scale, that works for building management systems as well, where you can control and do the same thing using chillers, store it in water, overchill the water while you've got the energy or not. Yeah. And and in the structural field, then when you're designing buildings, you can design around the insulation. And someone once said, what's the solution to high prices? And the economist said, high prices. And the answer to that, the reason for that is, when you've got high prices, you go and do something. So builders now suddenly see, all right, we've got high electricity prices. It's worth spending that bit more to build an insulation.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's where, capitalism can be a great tool at driving innovation and entrepreneurship where it's really needed.
Yeah. One other thing with buildings, seeing as obviously structural, is the one thing I'm not seeing measured or monitored is embodied energy. So when you see a building being demolished, and I've had that, someone said, we've gone from a 4-star building to now we're 6-star. What they don't say is it would take years to recover the volumes of concrete just smashed up and moved off-site. They don't look at all of that energy, and I'd like to see that introduced as a key measure.
Definitely. And there's as people start metering and monitoring normal energy and buildings, or the grid starts moving towards renewable, there's probably going to be a lot more focus placed on embodied energy as well. Do you think that's a fair statement?
Yes. Embodied energy is probably one of the biggest savings, because products now only last a year or two in cases. When you throw that out, you're throwing away a massive amount of energy. A computer typically uses 5 times as much energy to make as it ever consumes in its lifetime.
Oh, wow.
So a building, typical building, and typical, you know what typical is like, it's an average, which it takes 15 years to recover the embodied energy. So I think this is significant. This is where building materials come into it. So structural timber might be really good because it's recyclable, but concrete, once you demolish it, you can't really get much value out of that. Oh,
yeah.
Pardon?
Definitely, yeah. And there's and cement as well. It's 8% of the world emissions, and people think it's inevitable and that we need these emissions, but there's new solutions coming out there like geopolymer cements. We spoke to Yanni van der Venter, who founded Zerobond, who's doing some awesome work with geopolymers. So there's all these new solutions coming through as well as timber, like you mentioned.
And that's right. Sorry, I just had to adjust the sound so you don't get any more.
Oh.
I thought you had to advise me there was this meeting we had.
Yeah.
So sorry, just to run through that then is, yes, all these different materials, as you mentioned, cement is obviously problematic, partly because it's not recyclable. And there's talk of the circular economy. And I'd see if you get the right pricing with the economics, that would drive recyclability. But you don't really want to be putting up a large building and knocking it down on a regular basis in any event. So as long as it's quantified, there are many different ways of solving that, yes.
Yeah, awesome. I guess as we move toward the end now, so what do you think will have the biggest impact on the buildings industry in the future?
Well, I suppose materials is a key issue, as you mentioned, with cement and cement replacements and polymers. Timber framing is fairly big. When I first came across timber framing, it was, as you can gather, in South Africa, it was very rare to have a timber building other than a cottage at the seaside. So it took me by surprise. It's got a lot of advantages. So the material part of it will come into it. There will be issues of capturing water and, so being more sustainable tanks to some extent, although maybe a centralized water storage is better than home tanks. And then, of course, energy is going to be the issue, where you would have most houses will be self-sustaining and designed around energy efficiency.
Yeah.
Now, that's becoming a clear cost issue. New buildings will have that. And take into account issues like shading. You see that a lot of buildings are just, particularly residential, they don't have eaves and so on. So these people many years ago, hundreds of years ago, built their house with a big overhang. They knew about the sun.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. And just quickly before we wrap it up, what made you get into politics? It's really exciting to see that there's an engineer in politics who understands some of the sustainability issues that are going on, and also understands economics, and you're a bit of an entrepreneur yourself as well. So, yeah, what drove you in this direction?
I suppose I've always had the view from age 10 when playing soccer, when our headmaster chased off a number of people from the soccer field because of their colour, that politics affects you at a young age. I then, at that stage, stood up to the headmaster and try to, as a young 10-year-old, saying, look, this is not really acceptable. You've ruined our game. And so we all walked off. I didn't get anywhere. But growing up there, I realised politics affects everyday decisions. It's not something right out there. So as a student, I saw the issues. What got me into that now is a number of things all aligned. Some of my reports ended up in Parliament and the Senate, which called out, did the due diligence, and it showed fairly unacceptable behaviour, lack of tenders, lack of process. If that happens once, that's fine, but that happened a few times, and I can list about over five specific incidents involving myself, plus looking at how society, if you don't get that sensible debate internally, you get a problem. So slowly these align, being involved as an energy consultant, so obviously energy is a topical issue as well. I've got drawn into that even more.
Yeah.
And so a number of aspects, yeah.
Awesome. Fantastic. And if people want to find out more about you, where can they find you or contact you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, certainly. I suppose they're on the consulting side. If they Google my name and the company Resonant, they'd find that. Or they could look at the political side. So I'm still running the company. Obviously, I'd have to work out what happens. The Xenophon's SA Best. Google my name. It's got contact details there. And yes, they can.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Graham. I'll end it there. That was absolutely awesome.
Well, thank you, Adam. I appreciate that chance, and I need to find out. Yeah, chat to you more. Yeah, it's always a bit of one side. It's always good to know your thoughts as well. But
I was like, even during that, I'm like, why am I saying? I should just be listening. It's rare you get an opportunity to speak to someone who you seem to know about everything. So, were you always just following your curiosity and where that led you? Because a lot of people right now, I guess, give me the advice just to specialise, and I'm somewhere in between structural engineering and sustainability. I'm somewhere in the middle of that.
It's curiosity, certainly, and I suppose at a younger age I got exposed to a number of different areas, and then the principles, it actually is not as difficult to suddenly change into a new field as people might think. You've got the same process and principles. You look, what's the objective, what you're looking at, then you understand standards. And so when you know one discipline, switching to another is easy. It's like playing a musical instrument. If you play one instrument really well, when you learn the next one, you don't start from scratch. You know where all the notes are. Now you just have to learn specifics.
Yeah.
And so I found switching between the industries after a while was... it was not as difficult as I would have expected. You had to do a lot and learn, but enjoyed doing that. It's
awesome.
It's always been interesting.
Yeah, just it briefly came up in the interview then, but I just resigned from WSP, who were part of Parsons Brinckerhoff.
That's right. Yeah,
as a part of the Adani Carmichael thing, but yeah, it's unbelievable that. And it's one of those projects that never got spoken about at all internally, even though we were doing it. So it was, interesting project, that.
I saw that internally with the large consultants. Sometimes their projects undertaken. That some of that happened with the Franklin Dam in Tasmania long before I was in Australia. But reading that, the engineering consultants were all looking for the work rather than is this the right project for the nation. And what are the implications of that? And I think a greater emphasis there would be good to see.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, well, if you want, anytime you want to chat, Adam,
appreciate it. Yeah, if you're ever in Melbourne, or if I end up going through Adelaide, I'll be sure to shoot you a message and have a coffee or something.
Yeah, that'll be great. Yeah, catch up and see how things are going. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Graham. Cheers.
Okay. Cheers, Adam. Thanks. Cheers.
Hey guys, Adam here. Just before you go, just one quick request. If you're enjoying the show, please leave a review. It helps our rating and ranking on iTunes, so more people can hear from the people who are making our cities better places for our future.